Right here. This might sound like weird science. There's more information in here than most databases for Fortune 500 companies. Midsummer, Operation Prepare Fall Crop. Beans enrich the soil. They add nitrogen to the soil. So one of the benefits of planting beans is to enrich the soil for other stuff that's coming behind it. You know? So we deliberately put these beds of beans here. So now that they're done, our task is to simply chop them up and turn them into the soil. There's no need to take it out. Now we say they add nitrogen to the soil, so therefore it's a little hot, but they've had a little while to decompose, you know? So it shouldn't be too hot. When I say hot, it's not hot to the touch of the hand, but it's high in nitrates. So it might be something that you want to wait a couple of days before you put something else behind it, like a seed, you know? So another feature of our garden, which is very intentional, are these mounds over here. These mounds are nothing but the beds in a smaller size. And they play a really functional role. For instance, April told us that we have a very exciting initiative coming up for the fall to grow some pumpkins, to grow some vine foods that will actually serve a few purposes. Of course, we love pumpkins around the end of October in the harvest time, but also something that you can engage with your children in a process of focusing on one specific plant and watching its development, right? But why are these mounds here? And how do they work? Well, they simply work like this. Put food in the ground and let it grow. That's the magic. That's the formula. Don't tell anybody. Keep it secret. Put food in the ground and let them grow. We just make them high enough where they can support the root system, right? So this is a creative way of using space. If you don't have more wood, you ran out of wood or other supplies, we still have soil, build some mounds. But these mounds are right here, and the whole thought of them being right here is that when the pumpkins start growing, kind of like if you could just pan around to the melons, the pumpkins have a similar kind of vine. Right? Pumpkins have a similar kind of vine. It's much thicker usually, right? But the pumpkins run on a vine. So if we have the melons there, as we have them, they'll run up the hill. And the thing about that is, we're not just wanting them to run up the hill so they can get lost in the sauce. We want them to run up the hill because that's their nature. Their nature is to run. And anything, this is one of the first lessons you can share with the children. If you allow something to flourish in its nature or to grow in its nature, that's when it really flourishes, right? So pumpkins, they like to run. What I'm doing here is just holding up these pepper plants, which by their nature, they get tall, you know what I mean? So as we hold them up, we'll create more space on the ground, as you can see, for other things to grow next to them. One of the things we like to do in the summertime is use big stuff like this to create shade. So therefore we can grow more things that maybe need a little bit cooler weather, like lettuces and all that kind of stuff. So we put something like this down and then put the food to the western side of it, right? Therefore this will eclipse it. So in the morning time or most of the day, this will cast a shadow over it, and the lettuce and other things can grow easily. These are our peppers. And these peppers are going to be abundant. So we definitely encourage you to harvest. As you can see, they turn red when they're getting ripe. And look up your favorite pepper sauce recipe, or get in contact with a family member. You know, let this inspire a connection of generations. Talk to the elders in your family or something. Or maybe some of y'all know recipes yourself. But let's just find some recipes. Let's be creative and find some nice pepper sauce recipes. So this is the compost pile, folks. And this is basic planting soil, planting mix that we source locally. And in the bed, we mix that with what we call zoo poop. I want to show you this and kind of spend a little bit of emphasis on this, put a little bit of emphasis on this. I'm just weeding it right now. But what I want to show you, or the reason I'm weeding it, is this is our source of more food. This is our main source of food for the plants, right? The environment they live in. As we spoke, I think the first time, if you think about it, use the analogy of where your children go to school. or how deliberate most parents are about placing their children in an environment that is nurturing, right? It's the very same thing with a plant. So this is the environment. So what we want to do, especially as winter is coming, there are a few things, and I didn't bring any with me, but I want to tell you about them. And we can actually do some experiments with some of it. One substance is raw milk. Raw milk. Raw cow's milk. Raw cow's milk adds a lot of the microbes, the healthy microbes that really enrich the soil and really help the environment, help the whole soil environment. You might not know this, but right here, this might sound like weird science. There's more information in here than most databases for Fortune 500 companies in this little stuff right here, in this handful of soil, right? All kind of information. And I'm talking scientifically. I'm not speaking metaphorically or any of this. Information, information. So this is the building block of civilization. This is the soil, right? So when we add stuff like the raw milk, the microbes are generated even more, and it adds to the vigor of this little ecosystem. There's a whole ecosystem right in here, just like there's an ecosystem out here, right? So it's very important. So we want to keep this area clean, and I would say, let's just say, for argument's sake, a small area, about 4 feet wide by 2 feet wide, just this little part over here, we can add the microbes, and let's just do some experimentation. The beautiful thing about this garden is, as the weeks go by, the days go by, the weeks go by, the months go by, we experiment. We put a little bit of this type of soil that we treated a little bit under some kale plants, as we're getting ready to grow more kale and collards and all that for the winter and the fall. And we do some kale plants without it. And what's the difference? We observe what's the difference. So we can learn through trial and error, just like the people who we learn from, those experts on the YouTube channels, or the people at the UGA Extension Service and all that. There's empirical science to gardening, but most of it is through trial and error, because we're living in a really rapidly changing environment, right? So all the traditional stuff like when to plant and when not to plant, that's out the window. So therefore, other ways of nurturing the food is also something that is ongoing. So right here, another substance I can tell you about is alfalfa. Alfalfa is a slow release nitrogen. Alfalfa, when I'm talking about the alfalfa, I'm talking about horse feed. So if you go to the regular feed and seed stores, you'll find the alfalfa growing there. But what is special about the alfalfa? Alfalfa has deep roots, some of the deepest roots in the plant kingdom, so-called kingdom, right? I don't know why it's not a queendom, you know what I mean? But anyway, I don't want to go into that. But so alfalfa, because it has such deep roots, that's why horses, big strong horses, that's what they eat. They don't eat burgers, they don't eat fries, you know what I mean? That's what they eat, alfalfa. They eat the hay and they eat alfalfa. And the roots, because they're so deep, they bring up a lot of minerals, and so that's why they're able to sustain horses. So something like alfalfa is something we can put in here as well. So as this stuff just sits through the winter, I'm talking about in the springtime, all we have to do is just lift our hands, put our hands in here, and you see worms, just big old fat juicy worms just dancing everywhere. That's the goal. And we can do that. We can call the worms up. Scientifically, we can enrich this soil, right? All by using some very basic methods. So this is something we want to focus on. So when you come and visit the garden, be intentional about, even if nothing else, just observing the soil, observing the different phases of it. If we decide to do some experimentation, and April will notify people of that, let's just be observing. But this is our gold mine right here. That's why I'm spending so much time on it. This right here is our gold mine. This right here. The most important factor in any agricultural adventure, whether it's a little backyard garden, whether it's a patio, whatever it is the soil. Soil is the most important factor. And how we plant the corn next to the beans and all that. This is one of the reasons why we do that. Because corn takes a lot from the soil, and beans give a lot to the soil. So it's like a fair exchange.